Equinox. Today's presentation, Manuela. Quito had been the first South American city proclaiming a still-shy independence. The Spanish authorities unleashed a cruel persecution. They sought blood. They will harvest rebelliousness.
1810. I was 15 years old when I witnessed the massacre of the Patriots. A year before, they were the first light in South America. They were heroes. Now, they were martyrs. My father took me to the convent. If it was meant to be prison, it later became my refuge.
Yes, Manuelita Sáenz.
Even though I was born in Quito in 1795 as an illegitimate daughter, I was raised at the Catahuango Hacienda, which belonged to my aunt, Ignacia Espuru. Here is where I learned all I know about horses and other arts that were hardly accepted for a woman. My father was Don Simón Sáenz, an important member of the royal audience. My mother, Doña Joaquina Espuru, had a secret love affair with Don Simón, affair which allowed me to be born. Neither the sounds nor news of independence movement could be heard behind the thick walls of the Santa Catalina convent, where my father had decided to change my residence. I shared a mutual sympathy with my new tutor, Sister Josefa, from the first day that I arrived.
Manuela was educated reading about the lives of the saints and passages of literature permitted by the church. Aristotle and Plutarch in Greek, St. Thomas and St. Augustine in Latin, Cervantes in Spanish. She received lessons in French and English, besides being taught household chores.
I felt locked up in my cell. That's why I would escape at night and would run around the convent. But I found surprises. A priest at this hour. We were allowed to visit our families every certain period of time. The best thing about these visits was when I spent time at Catahuango with my two slaves, Jonatas and Natal. They never felt as such. They became my most intimate friends, and more so, my only friends. We were fully developed women, but the only one that had had experience with men was Jonatas. My feelings repressed by the many years in the convent only fed my doubts more. The air of freedom I felt at Catahuango awakened the curiosity for the restless sensations of my body that I started to feel after those long rides. That afternoon, Jonatas, after reading the ashes of my cigar, predicted that I would become a gypsy.
Niña Manuela. Fue un sueño.
When I was 21 years old, I accompanied my father to one of his many trips to Panama. On that trip, I met Dr. James Thorne, an English doctor that showed himself very friendly towards my father during the trip. Thorne was a doctor that did not practice medicine except on private cases and for his own purposes. In the deplorable state in which I was, I accepted the Englishman's courtship and some beverage that gave me some relief. Thorne was a talented negotiator. I did not know that they were deciding about my life at that moment. The doctor asked Don Simón for my hand in marriage. My father offered the Englishman a dowry of 8,000 pesos. I accepted the marriage considering the embarrassing situation my father faced in front of society due to my condition as illegitimate, and also because I was tired of people talking behind my back and on the streets. This would free him of the blemish on his honor. Everything was covered with my marriage and me moving to Lima. Starting from that night on, Dr. Thorne did exactly the same thing every night. With mathematical precision and without varying any of his movements. Rosita Campuzano was a woman from Guayaquil that lived in Lima. Meeting her was crucial in my life.
Manuela identified with Rosita in more than one aspect. Rosita represented a lifestyle that was more attractive than the one Manuela had lived thus far.
Sometime later, my brother Jose Maria, then an officer of the Spanish army, arrived to Lima. I wanted him to meet Rosita immediately. Jose Maria quickly got into contact with her. Upon request of those present, he offered to inform us about the moment's political situation.
To the south, Argentina had reached its independence, and also Chile. The Argentinian General San Martin was about to arrive to Lima. Mexico was already independent. Venezuela and Colombia had done the same. Only Lima and Quito still lacked their independence.
Rosita told me that she had a relationship with people that wanted Peru's autonomy and that she attended meetings with the intention of organizing actions to become part of the independence movement of South America. Later, Jose Maria asked me to mediate the change of front of all his battalion to the Patriot side. It was a delicate mission, but I felt very proud of deserving his trust.
The liberation winds blew in a good direction. The Venezuelan General Sucre continued his triumphant march towards Quito. On the dawn of May 24th, the Patriot forces surprised the Spanish army, attacking them from the heights of the Pichincha volcano. At sunset, the Patriots' victory becomes true. Manuela returned to Quito after receiving in Lima the high insignia of the Order of the Sun. General San Martin had recognized her as the artifice of the passing of the Spanish battalion of her brother Jose Maria to the Liberation Army. By that time, Quito was preparing itself to receive the liberator Simón Bolívar, who entered the city on June 16, 1822. imagine that he would meet the love of his life on that night. The next evening, Manuela began her visits to the palace. Bolívar had asked her to be his confidant. But to his own surprise, Manuela arrived well armed. After staying in Quito for 18 days, Bolívar had to leave to Guayaquil.
How many more times would I have to live the scene of our separation? I did not know then. My mother died at my birth. Therefore, my Aunt Ignacia substituted her, at least respecting the inheritance. Talking to her about this matter was not as easy as I thought. She had to give me 10,000 pesos and keep the hacienda. In the middle of this upsetting argument, a letter arrived that proceeded from Lima. It was from my husband, Thorn. He begged me to return to Lima because he was madly in love with me. I, on my behalf, did not feel a thing for him. Bolívar occupied all of my being. I loved him. I felt I was growing with his ideas. I finally got my Aunt Ignacia to give me some donkeys, horses, and provisions, which I destined to the patriotic army. We took our contribution to the camp of General Sucre, who was a hero of the Battle of Pichincha, located on the outskirts of Quito.
Bolívar was there on his way to Peru and was preparing his troops to march towards Lima, where Congress had called him due to the seriousness of the situation. The romance continued with growing intensity.
On one of the last days before his parting, I made the mistake of telling him about my husband's letter. Bolívar at once declared our separation for respect to my married condition. "You do not know what you're talking about," I told him. "I am united to you by your struggle, which is also mine and that of thousands. Do you really think that only you can reach the full understanding of freedom?"
Manuela had insisted in fighting the enemies of freedom.
You really know how to convince, Manuela. You're unique. You want to battle? All right. Use it. These were his words to my great surprise. Then he left towards Lima.
Independence had ended with many privileges, and those affected started to finance appearing revolts. History was calling Manuela Sáenz once again.
The people of Quito hated me once again. For them, the crazy woman Sáenz had returned. Now, as the lover of Bolívar, I did not care anymore about the gossip. I only dedicated myself to defend the liberator. I boarded one more time on the way to Lima. Thorn had tormented me with his letters. In one, he had even written that he knew about my romance with Bolívar. Nevertheless, he did not stop insisting on my return.
Well.
I took advantage of Thorn's trip to Valparaíso to visit Bolívar in the outskirts of Lima.
Qué gusto en verla, mi generala.
As always, the general's boots delayed our encounter. But something unexpected happened.
¿Qué haces aquí? Dije que nadie puede pasar.
The liberator did not leave the room or receive anyone for 6 days until the marks healed. Regretting what I had done, I myself looked for reconciliation. To demonstrate his gratitude and trust in me, the liberator made me responsible of handling all of his correspondence, official and private, all of the archives. I was walking on clouds, but it was a great responsibility. I could find out all about government business as well as his most intimate secrets. That is how Santander was attributed an anonymous letter sent to other conspirators.
Let us allow the liberator to pass through Peru without an authorization. He does what he wants anyway. Congress will get rid of him in this way, and that astute woman who is his companion. In the end, we will not send him any troops nor supplies. The situation will become more difficult, and he will not know what to do without governmental command.
I tried to tell the general about Santander's trap, but he was incredulous, facing these rumors.
Because of the betrayal, the Patriots' army was forced to evacuate Lima. They needed to regroup for the counterattack. The disappointment was that the traitors were companions in arms that until recently fought together at the same front. With a renewed spirit, the patriotic army was close to finish the war. Defeated in all of South America, the Spaniards were cornered in Peru. For them, the fight was to death.
I surprisingly received a letter from the liberator that said, "My dear, you talked to me about the pride that you feel while participating in the campaign. Well, my friend, receive my congratulations and my commission. Would you like to taste the bitterness of this struggle? Well, march with me toward Junín. I do not dissuade your decision and audacity, but on the march there is no place for returning," he wrote to me.
That is when the day of the Battle of Junín arrived. It was the 6th of August, 1824. Bolívar divided his army according to the requirements of the terrain. He placed the women on a hill under Palacio's responsibility.
The victory at that battle was a great teaching for me. I could live the crucial and decisive moments in the war for freedom. Quoting a letter from Bolívar to Sucre before the Battle of Ayacucho, "I beg you, as your superior, to take absolute care of Manuelita and protect her from any danger." And to me he wrote, "I want you alive. Dead, I die. Yours, Bolívar." In spite of all the warnings of the liberator, I suddenly found myself in the middle of the battle, and unexpectedly I thought I was reliving a scene from my adolescence. It might be macabre, but in that mustache I found represented all of the infamy that we had suffered. They told me that General Sucre had asked for me to be named colonel, which Bolívar had accepted, that Santander opposed. I don't know. I didn't care about the rank. I was a soldier of Bolívar. I had the luck that my love and my convictions walked hand in hand, and I had the courage to unite them.
After the victories of the Junín and Ayacucho battles, Bolívar's world was huge, bigger than the United States at the time, due to the war, highly in debt, but with an organized and united population, a world power.
But General Simón Bolívar was also a man, and not a faithful man, suspecting what I was going to find. And what did I find? A man with a cause might be the best lover, but is the worst mate. My arrival to Lima had been so unpleasant that I tried to concentrate myself on my work and the archives that had been abandoned for so long. A letter in French? Janet Hart? And who is this one now?
Mademoiselle Hart, je ne comprends pas. Vos vers sont bien jolis à l'inspiration des liberteurs. C'est qui vous? Soy la Sáenz, ya estoy aquí.
And one more time, we reconciled. Only Santander charged again.
¡Diego! Llévasela al Libertador.
The political situation was tense. Letters came and went. Santander contemplated. There were more accusations. And meanwhile, the liberator was directing himself to all of America to summon all of them to a Congress in Panama.
I finally convinced the liberator to go to Bogota because it was evident that Santander was preparing some dirty move. Peru rejected its integration to the Great Colombia. That is the reason why I was banned from Lima. I boarded once again on one of my pilgrimages towards the liberator. My husband, Dr. Thorne, tried to free me up to the last moment, but it was useless. That was the last time that I saw him. Once I arrived to Bogota, I rented a house in front of the San Carlos Church, very near to the palace.
Manuela then moved to the outskirts of Bogota, to the villa where Bolivar was resting. The forever loyal Irish General Ferguson received her with bad news. The liberator was getting worse, and that tuberculosis had weakened his body. The Great Colombia was just as sick and threatened to break into 1,000 dismembered countries. But his capacity to fight against even his own sickness was amazing. While Bolivar was absent, Manuela represented the position of the liberator. With this going on, the confrontation with Santander was inevitable.
No hace falta. Gracias. Mire, señora Sáenz, ¿hasta cuándo piensa seguir inmiscuyéndose en asuntos políticos y militares que no le competen? Usted no tiene el menor conocimiento ni experiencia para hacerlo. Lastimosamente, mi general Bolívar la ha malcriado a usted, dejándola entrometerse en cuestiones poco apropiadas para una mujer. Usted ha perseguido a mi general por todas partes y de una manera tan indiscreta que a cualquiera llenaría de vergüenza. ¿Cómo es posible que una dama, si usted se considera así, produzca bochinches por donde va, disfrazada de varón? Esto es insufrible, señora Thorne, o Sáenz, o como se llame.
Qué temerario, general Santander. ¿Y usted en nombre de qué o quién me habla de esa forma? Usted no es más que un soldado cualquiera que oculta sus ambiciones bajo ese uniforme que no es digno de usar. Yo no hablo con personas que engendran la traición en sus corazones.
We shouldn't be surprised that the romance lasted for a short time, and the liberator started his journey once again.
I decided to celebrate his birthday at home in spite of his absence, but maybe my need to publicly reject the adversaries of the liberator took me too far, although it resulted funny for me.
¡Qué ocurrencia, Manuela! Oye, Manuela. ¡Listos! ¡Fuego!
Upon his arrival, Bolívar reproached me by saying that my irresponsible acts had only increased the uneasiness that at the time was being lived in Colombia. One night, Palacios came to tell me that Bolívar needed me. Upon learning of the liberator's anguish, I understood that the great Colombia seemed to agonize. I felt that a bad omen was floating in the air. He did not speak to me when I arrived. I couldn't understand his long silence. Only that fatal cough.
In those days, Bolívar was staying at the government palace. The discontent of Santander and his followers was felt everywhere because Bolívar assumed the supreme powers and eliminated the vice presidency, naming Santander a diplomatic representative in a foreign country.
That night seemed eternal.
Gyula. Son más que unos cobardes.
Cobardes nada, son muchos. La ventana. Salta.
The relevant causes demand great tributes, like the lives of the very best. The by everyone beloved General Ferguson was one of those. His Irish blood will always stay in this land for whom he sacrificed himself.
El Libertador. El Libertador. Acá. Milagro, Excelencia.
Everything was falling apart. What before was a continent, what was expected to become a world, converted itself into parishes, into provinces with a small village mentality. Those generals that fought together with Bolívar behaved now like sergeants. Bolívar's dream was about to extinguish, as well as the life of the man that had dreamt it. Listen to my final voice as my political career comes to an end. I ask you, I beg you to stay together so that you will not be the assassins of the nation and your own executioners. That is how he ended his speech at the Congress in Bogota.
My love was leaving, and I wanted to protect him from the cold, so I decided to put two and not one poncho on him. My Manuela, you must stay serene and keep your judgment. Be careful with what you do. If not, you will lose both of us by losing yourself, he said as he was leaving.
Even with Santander in exile, his followers continued with the hostilities. They even characterized the Liberator and Manuela in denigrating dolls. But she kept in the battle.
After so much time without seeing my love, I decided to leave. On the way, I met with an officer that carried a letter. The only thing that I felt was to join him in death. Everything is in the past. Santander banned me from Colombia. Rocafuerte banned me from my country. I received the news of the assassination of Marshal Sucre, the death of my brother Jose Maria, and of my husband, James. During my exile in Paita, I got several visits, all of them loyal admirers of Bolivar. The last visit was death.
Manuela's house was burned because its two inhabitants, Manuela and Jonatas, died the same day of a diphtheria epidemic. Manuela's chest, rescued by General de la Guerra, contained a valuable heritage of Ecuador, the documents that reveal the real image of Manuela Sáenz. And the letter 1,000 times read, through which you proved it was true, so much combat of trench and bed, irrespectful lady from Quito, tranquil guest of a scandal that others kept locked and with naphthalene in the chest of the biography, from where you emerged to show your breast proudly, like a figurehead on high seas.